Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and hi if you're new here, I'm Jade, and today's an exciting video because I'm doing my take 2 of trying to find a book that kind of captures the essence of Labyrinth. If you're here because just like me, you are looking for a book that really captures that sort of vibe of Jim Henson's Labyrinth, then I will link my first part in the description in case you haven't seen it. In that one, I tried out 3 books that were supposedly based upon / retellings of Labyrinth. For me, they generally all missed the mark, but if you just want to know about them and what their plots are, obviously not every book is for everyone, so please do go and watch part 1 if you haven't seen it. But today we are diving into part 2, where I'm so much more hopeful that I'm going to find a book I love. Even if they don't really get Labyrinth vibes, if I end up loving the book, that's okay. But last time was just such a disappointment, it left me in a bit of a reading slump. So I am a little anxious on how this is going to go, but I do have high hopes. But before we get into which books I am going to be reading, I have to show you something that I got this week, which is perfection. And that is this Labyrinth novelization. This only came out 2 days before I am filming this, and I have already read it, so I could sort of talk about it quickly for you. So obviously this captures the essence of Labyrinth. It is Labyrinth, but I had to show it to you. It is a illustrated novelization, so it is, I guess, aimed at a younger audience, but for me it is really for those that have grown up and love this movie. It's a very heavy, chunky book. What I will say quickly is there was a couple of sort of pages that didn't print very well in my copy. I don't know if that's an issue with all the first prints, but just something to be aware of. But it was so worth buying this for me. If you watched my part 1 video, I did talk about the official novelization of Labyrinth, which was, I think that one was written in the 80s by A.C.H. Smith. And even though I did love it, because I feel like if you love Labyrinth and you love the story, it's really easy to get into the novelizations. What I will say about the original one in comparison to this new one is that the original one didn't really have any description. If I hadn't have watched the movie first, the novel there would have made no sense to me. It didn't really have any description, so I wouldn't have been able to picture anything. This, however, has lots of description in the writing and obviously illustrations throughout some of the parts. So this is a lot easier, I think, and a lot more accessible, especially if you're wanting to get it to sort of share with your children or anything like that. I think this one makes a lot more sense. It's much better written, to be honest. Almost all of the lines are word for word from the movie. There are a couple of changes because obviously we don't have songs in here. And if I have one qualm, I have given this 5 stars because I think as novelizations go, I mean, I loved my time with this book. But my one qualm was kind of the end confrontation scene. I feel like the dialogue could have been a little bit better, but that's just me being fussy and a personal choice. But I just think this is great. So if you love Labyrinth just like me, I do recommend getting this, especially if you like collecting anything Labyrinth, because it is done really well. I suppose my only other complaint is that in the artwork, I don't know if you can see just from the front cover, I obviously don't want to show you all of it, you know, experience the book for yourself, but Sarah's face and Jareth's face aren't really accurate, but the rest of the art is so on point. I feel like, I don't know if this is a copyright issue that they're not allowed to recreate David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly's faces, or whether it was just a conscious choice, just in case, you know, people didn't think it was quite right to sort of stop complaints and just sort of let people sort of see their own faces on them. I don't know, but the rest, Hoggle, etc., is so accurate that I find it a little bit weird. But there we go. It's still a great book, and I will quickly show you about the dust cover because I think it's really cool. It is in the design of Sarah's Labyrinth book. Obviously this is much more chunky and heavy, but I just thought this was cool. And there is an extra scene in this that is not in the movie, which is also in the other novelization, so I assume that it is a scene that was originally planned for the movie that they never did. I've never seen it as a deleted scene or anything, but it is what's behind the second door knocker. The one she doesn't go through in the movie, she goes through both in the book. So if you're looking for a little difference, that might be a reason to pick it up, if you're wondering what was supposed to be behind there and you don't already know. But yeah, I just wanted to share this with you before I move on to say which books I am going to be looking at to see if they do compare to Labyrinth and give me the Labyrinth feels. I want Jareth vibes, okay? I want that essence of Jareth captured for me. Obviously, ideally, I'm obviously looking for a more mature relationship. In the original, I never wanted Sarah and Jareth to actually get together. She's a kid, but I want something with the vibes, but that allows it to go further, I think, deep down. So I did speak about this on TikTok and I got a lot of suggestions from a lot of people for books. So I can definitely make a part 3 at some point with how many suggestions I got. But I'm gonna stick, I might do 4 books this time. I'm definitely gonna do 3. There were 3 that had the most sort of recommendations at the time of ordering the books. I ordered these a while ago because I'm currently on a book buying ban, and I knew I was going to be doing this 75 hard challenge and going on a book buying ban. So I literally ordered all of these literally pretty soon after I filmed the other Labyrinth video, and then just had a break, and now we're getting to them. But there were 3 that clearly had the most sort of recommendations, and then also there was just 1 that I already own. So that's why we might end up with 4. I'm definitely going to do the one that I'd already owned anyway, because I want to get that off my TBR sooner than later. The only reason I might not do all 3 of the most recommended is they're quite long. One of them I think is almost 900 pages and the other's like 1,000. There is one that's shorter, but yeah, 2 of them are gonna almost total 2,000 pages just between 2 books. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna have time, but we will see. I will probably go into the books as I read each one, but I am going to quickly show you what to expect. So at the time of ordering, this book, Wintersong by S. Jae-Jones, was definitely the most recommended on the video. It is one I also recognized the name for because when I was researching for my first video, this is a name that came up. What I will do is I will give you the sort of synopsis every time I start one of these new books rather than do it all here at the beginning, I think this time. But I just thought I'd at least introduce what books we're going to have. So yes, this one. Then there is The Forbidden Game by L.J. Smith. This was also recommended a lot on my video, not one I had heard of. I do believe this is like YA and it's like 3 books in one, which is why this is a big book. And that's why I might not make it through all of these in this video because yeah, this one is almost 800 pages, okay. At first I thought I could just read the first book and then talk about it, but from what I gather, I think you kind of need all 3 together. Maybe I'll end up being able to just do the first one, give you the vibe, and then fit others in. We'll see. And then another one, which this one I've picked up on Kindle, is Between by L.L. Starling. There was also a lot of recommendations for this one, but my Kindle is saying it's like 1,000 pages. Another really long one. But then one book that got suggested a couple of times is Caraval by Stephanie Garber, which I already owned. It was a book that I've already been really interested in reading. So I'm actually going to start with this one because this one definitely doesn't claim to be based on Labyrinth or anything like that, but people just think I will get a lot of vibes from this one. I believe all 3 of the others are kind of recognized as sort of Labyrinth inspired. I'd have to do some more research to confirm that, but that was the impression I was getting from my post. Whereas I think this one is just one people said they feel it does give that kind of vibe. So as I'm going to start with Caraval, I am going to read you the synopsis of this one. Scarlett Dragna has never left the tiny island where she and her sister Tella live with their powerful and cruel father. Now Scarlett's father has an arranged marriage for her, and Scarlett thinks her dreams of seeing Caraval, the faraway once-a-year performance where the audience participates in the show, are over. But this year, Scarlett's long-dreamt-of invitation finally arrives. With the help of a mysterious sailor, Tella whisks Scarlett away to the show. Only, as soon as they arrive, Tella is kidnapped by Caraval's mastermind organizer, Legend. It turns out that this season's Caraval revolves around Tella, and whoever finds her first is the winner. Scarlett has been told that everything happens during Caraval is only an elaborate performance, but she nevertheless becomes enmeshed in a game of love, heartbreak, and magic with the other players in the game. And whether Caraval is real or not, she must find Tella before the 5 nights of the games are over. A dangerous domino effect of consequences is set off, and her sister disappears forever. So I guess she's saving her sister, you know, it's a little bit like Sarah going to save Toby, her brother, so that's where I kind of get a little bit of a Labyrinth vibe, I guess, but apart from that, I don't really, just from the description, even though it sounds like a really good book and something that I would enjoy, it doesn't exactly give me Labyrinth vibes from the beginning, but quite a few people just said they thought I might feel like it does. So I'm going to read this one. I'm going to do all my reading off camera, I think, because we're going to have quite a lot to talk about. And then, yeah, I will come back, give you the summary every time I finish the book and what I think in comparison to Labyrinth. So yeah, I'm going to go away, read this, and I'll be back sometime in the near future. Okay everyone, just stopping by because I finished Caraval. So like I said, this one was a bit different. It was recommended to me that it sort of has Labyrinth vibes, but it's definitely not marketed at all that way, which is very different from all the other books that I read in the last sort of video that I done this. What I gotta say is I loved this book. But in terms of Labyrinth vibes, it's a bit hit or miss. I think the general vibe, yes, I think fans of Labyrinth are gonna like this. This definitely plays off the whole nothing is what it seems kind of theme that we get through Labyrinth, so I would compare it in that way, but the sort of romance element felt pretty different. However, that being said, I didn't like hate any of the romance element that was in here. It just wasn't very Labyrinth in the way it played out. So the plot of this is that we follow this girl Scarlet, who is trying to rescue her sister. Basically, these girls have a father that's pretty abusive and suffocating, and Scarlet is being put into an arranged marriage, and Tella, her sister, wants them to go and play this Caraval game. They've always wanted to play it. They've always written to Legend, who runs the Caraval games, about taking part, or like, can he bring it to their town? And this time they finally get invites. So Tella decides to take Scarlet because Scarlet's anxious about going because she's getting married. She decides to take her there, but then when they arrive on the island where the sort of Caraval games are being held, Tella suddenly disappears, and it all sort of plays out from there, and they find out the game is for the winner to try and find Tella. And Scarlet gets quite bad vibes, and she just knows she has to be the one to find Tella in order to save her sister. She just kind of gets these vibes, so she makes it her mission to go and save her sister. So obviously they are adults in this one, so it's a little bit different. She's not saving like a baby, but I do think that part really does capture the vibe. And like I said, it is a lot of nothing is what it seems. So is this like full-on Labyrinth vibes? Potentially not, but I loved it. And I do think people that like the story of Labyrinth will like this one, and I look forward to carrying on the series. So I give it a 5 out of 5 for how much I enjoyed it. I guess if I was to rate it on like Labyrinth vibes, I'd give it like 2.5 out of 5 in the fact that, you know, it does encompass some of that kind of atmosphere and mystery, but it isn't like that similar. But like I said, a great book, so I'm going to highly recommend it anyway. So this is a much better start to the last one, because I'd rather have a book that only has slight Labyrinth vibes but I love, than I would one that seems like it's trying to copy things but I just hate it, you know? So yeah, I feel like we're getting off to a much, much, much better start now in this one. So this has made me happy. It's feeling much, much, much more positive for this Labyrinth Part 2 video. And now I'm going to show you which book I'm going to move on to next. I decided to take on this one because it's quite beefy. So I thought short one, beefy one, short one, and then if I have time, I'll do the sort of long one that is on the Kindle. Like I said, this is almost 800 pages. It is 3 books in one, I believe, but I do think you are supposed to kind of read all of them for the story. I think that's why they've been like released under this name, The Forbidden Game, and then it's The Hunter, The Chase, The Kill. So I do think that maybe I do need to read all of them, and I think I just will, because it's one book, otherwise I'm gonna get confused. So just so you know what we are anticipating this one to be about, it is when Jenny buys a game for her boyfriend Tom, she finds herself inexplicably drawn to the guy behind the counter. There is something mysteriously alluring about Julian's pale eyes and bleached blonde hair, and when he places the game into her hands, she knows their connection is something deeper. But as Jenny and her 6 friends begin to play the game at Tom's birthday celebration, a night of friends and fun quickly turns into a night of terror and obsessive love. Because the game isn't just a game. It's the 7 friends' new reality where Julian reigns as the Prince of Shadows. One by one, the friends must confront their phobias to win the game. To lose the game is to lose their lives. And that is only the beginning. So first off, the weirdest thing that stuck out to me is in Caraval, there is a love interest called Julian, and it looks like the same in this as Julian. So that's not confusing at all, reading them back to back. But this does sound really, really interesting. This is one that was definitely suggested a lot of times that I tried this one on my TikTok. Like, so many people are like, you'll get Labyrinth vibes from this one. I think it's YA. So I think what's different this time is I'm doing a lot more YA books, and maybe that is just going to be more similar to Labyrinth, because I just feel like the ones I read last time were just like a little bit too dark and twisted. And like I said, even though yes, there is dark and twisted things in Labyrinth, and very much in this one too, actually, in Caraval, it's not so dark that it makes me completely creeped out and gives me the ick or anything like that. A lot of people have been telling me this one is kind of like Jumanji meets Labyrinth, which it does sound like it, that they sit down and they sort of play this game, and then obviously they can die while playing with this game. So it definitely has that Jumanji vibe too, but I do love Jumanji as a movie too, so I don't think that's a sort of bad crossover kind of influence. I don't know if the author herself ever claimed that this is like inspired by Labyrinth or anything like that, but literally so many people recommended this one. So I have real high hopes for it. Like I said, quite a long book, so maybe gone a few days before I'm recording my sort of like little update on what I thought of it. But yeah, I'm excited to try this, so I will come back and let you know what I thought and how Labyrinth vibey this one is. Okay everyone, I'm back, and I did read the whole of this, so it is 3 books in one. It was almost 800 pages, I think, but I did make it through all of this and I've got a few thoughts. So this was one of my most recommended on my TikTok about finding things with Labyrinth vibes. And what I will start by saying is that I do think the story overall, especially the first story, definitely captured a sort of Labyrinth-esque kind of feel to the story. I feel like the romance element still felt a little bit different, but I could kind of see it. This was very much Jumanji meets Labyrinth, especially in this first story. And I quite enjoyed the first one. It is very YA, and I do feel like it's the kind of book that I think if I'd read when I was younger, I would have liked it even more. But I've given this a 3.25 star rating because I thought the first book was much stronger, but I'm rating this as like a whole thing. So I think I would have given the first book maybe a 4-star rating, but the second and third, especially the second, I wasn't so into, to be honest. So I've just kind of said 3.25 for the whole thing collectively. But essentially what this ended up being about, so it's a group of friends and it is this guy's birthday and his girlfriend needs to sort out something for the party, something for them to do, and she goes out looking, ends up getting followed by some random guys, feels very uncomfortable, and ends up finding this random game shop that she didn't know existed and goes in there. In there, this guy sells her this board game, which is apparently very unique. She gets kind of weird vibes from the shop, but you know, whatever, takes this game, they take it back, and then obviously inevitably they play it. So that's where it kind of gets more of those sort of Jumanji vibes, because it's very much based about getting sucked into a board game. And this particular board game, they're kind of changed into like paper dolls, and they have to draw their like biggest fear. And once they're in this house, they have to fight their biggest fear in order to escape. However, we find out the reason they are in this game is there is this shadow man, and he has been, you know, observing the world, and he has fallen for our main female protagonist. And so he wants her for himself, but rather than, you know, just woo her like a normal person, he traps her in a game with her boyfriend and her friends and basically tries to force her to stay by saying they'd be safe if she just agrees to stay with him. So I'd say it's kind of a little bit darker than the actual Labyrinth, but I did quite enjoy the way the first bit played out. And like I said, it does have those sort of Labyrinth vibes in that she's trying to like fight to save her friends and her boyfriend. I think having the boyfriend in the story adds a bit of a like complexity layer that obviously Labyrinth doesn't have. There's no kind of love triangle thing. And it does end in a way that it can continue like it does, but I don't feel like you need to. I feel like you could definitely end on the end of the first book. And honestly, I feel like it would have been better as a standalone. I just feel like the second book got a bit repetitive because it kind of is a straight continuation, and then they get sucked into another game, and then they've got to try and, you know, escape that again, and then it happens again in the third book. But the third book I think is done a little bit better. It's a little bit different, it's got a bit of a twist, and then it ultimately leads to the whole end. And I guess you kind of see a slight redemption to the Shadow Man, I guess. But yeah, without giving too many spoilers, you know, I don't want to speak about the second and third book too much in case you do want to pick this up. But I do think the first book is way better and definitely has the most Labyrinth vibes to me, because I kind of feel like, you know, Labyrinth itself kind of ends in a way that you could continue things, but you don't need to. And I feel like that's how this first book ends. So I get the most Labyrinth vibes with how it ended and everything else from the first book. I think how it continues is less Labyrinth and more Jumanji. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Like, I don't want to spoil anything if you do want to give this a go. I think it's not a bad choice. I do prefer Caraval as a book, but this is probably slightly closer to Labyrinth vibes, but they both have it in the storyline a little bit. But I just think Caraval was much better written. I was like absorbed into that story, whereas this is definitely that little bit YA for me. And just some of the decisions and things the characters would say is a little bit juvenile. And her boyfriend in this book, Tom, I don't really like him at the beginning, because we learn that she does her hair and wears certain things because he likes it, and avoids certain things because he wouldn't like it. And I'm like, that makes him seem like an idiot to me, but he's never really portrayed that way throughout the book. So I wouldn't say I felt fully invested or connected to any of the characters enough, but it was still a fun read. Like I said, I did enjoy the first one. I just kind of wish that I didn't bother with the second and third. But hey, this is still way better than any of the books I read in my last video, so I am not unhappy with this. I'm still glad I have picked this up and read it. So yeah. And now we move on to Wintersong by Jae-Jones. I feel like this was the most recommended one. I feel like quite a few people suggested this, and it got a lot of likes on the comments suggesting this. There's a few people that disagree and said they thought it was written terribly, so I guess I'll see. I have started, as you can see, but I'm not very far into the book yet. I wanted to kind of film this and talk about it before I started reading it, but I will say I just didn't really have time and I wanted to continue reading and enjoy my reading time. So that's why I'm doing it now. What I will say is there is nothing on this book that like claims that it's influenced by Labyrinth, but I think you can tell from the description that it clearly does take some influence from it. So let me read you the blurb so you can kind of see what this is about. And I think obviously to me it is just influenced by Labyrinth, you can tell. Like I said, it doesn't claim it on this book though, which I do appreciate because I do think that sometimes when books really claim to be like another book, it gives me expectations for that book and it probably makes me like it less if it misses those expectations than if I'd have just enjoyed it without them. So this is the blurb. It says, all her life, Liesl has heard tales of the beautiful, dangerous Goblin King. They've enraptured her mind, her spirit, and inspired her musical compositions. Now 18 and helping to run her family's inn, Liesl can't help but feel that her musical dreams and childhood fantasies are slipping away. But when her own sister is taken by the Goblin King, Liesl decides she has no choice but to journey to the underground to save her. Drawn to the strange, captivating world she finds, and the mysterious man who rules it, she soon faces an impossible decision. And with time and the old laws working against her, Liesl must discover who she truly is before her fate is sealed. Dark, romantic and powerful, Wintersong will sweep you away into a world you won't soon forget. So I think, you know, the fact that it mentions the Goblin King, the underground, it takes her sister, I'm like, it's clearly influenced by Labyrinth. What I will say from reading the beginning is very much set years and years ago. There's like a mention of someone knowing Mozart in this book. So it's a little bit like a historical fiction version of it, I guess, which I quite like actually. I think it adds an interesting dynamic into the story. It means that the character of the Goblin King is kind of like this myth that lots of people have heard of, you know, even if they don't believe in it. Whereas, you know, in Labyrinth, he's just kind of a thing out of her Labyrinth book and appears. Whereas I think this has like a little bit more of a kind of like folklore feel to it. I'm not far enough in to say whether it's good or bad yet. I really am not. I'm like not even a fifth of the way through, I don't think, this book. But yeah, I mean, it definitely seems to give Labyrinth vibes from the description. So I will join you back here when I have finished it and give you my thoughts. I believe it is YA. It kind of reads that way at the beginning, but it still feels more mature than the Forbidden Game already. Like it's like YA, but without so much immaturity is the best way I can put it. Hopefully it stays that way, but yes, I will come back and let you know what I think of this one. Okay, everyone, so I actually had a rare day off today. So I have already finished Wintersong. So this was a reasonably easy read. It is just over 400 pages. And I mean, the print's kind of average, but I felt like it was quite easy. It was quite a simple read. It's definitely YA, but it is that kind of older vibe YA, which was good for me. I feel like I can absorb into them quite easily. However, the book does allude to intimacy. It's just that it's not completely explicit. So it's definitely that sort of like older vibe YA, which I like. So in this book, yes, we follow a girl called Liesl, and she is actually really good at music. She's great with like composing music and playing her instruments, but you know, this is historical fiction, like I said, so this is set in an older time where women were definitely more oppressed and not really regarded properly, so obviously no one cares that she's good at music. Everyone doesn't believe that she's actually that good. However, she does have some sort of support from her brother and her sister. They all seem quite close as siblings, and what we find out about these siblings is that they have often, when growing up, played in an area called the Goblin's Grove. That's what they call it, and we're now seeing them as adults, and they go to the Goblin Market, as it's known, and there Liesl's sister gets tempted into eating a peach, and something seems a little off. And then a little later on, Liesl notices that her sister is missing, and it turns out the Goblin King has taken her, and Liesl must enter the underground to try and save her sister. What I will say is that part of the plot is generally like the first half of the book, but I can't really talk too much about the plot of the second half without giving away things that happen in the book. It definitely gives some Labyrinth vibes for sure. You can definitely tell there's some straight influences, like I mentioned, the peach, and there are the odd line that is taken from the book. I know power over me is used as a phrase in the book. That's just one that stands out in my memory. And there's a lot of talk about being selfish and trying to live up to expectations. So yeah, you can tell this is definitely clearly influenced by Labyrinth, but it's definitely not like a complete copy of the story, which I do really appreciate. Like, obviously I'm not looking for a book that's literally just copied the story, because I want vibes in a great but legal way, and also just something a bit different. I want Labyrinth vibes, but you know, in their own story. And obviously this centers around a Goblin King, so very, very clearly influenced, but like I said, the story is different enough that it's not a complete copy. And I really do like the historical fiction aspect to this one. However, I've decided to give it 4 stars because I think the beginning of the book is so strong. I love the first half of the book, but I will say I think the second half got a little bit slow. I just feel like it needed a little bit more. It just felt kind of like it was going on and on a little bit at times. I felt like the pacing was a little off, but I really did like how it ended, and it does leave it kind of open. And I know there is a second book. This is the first of a duology. However, I'm a bit apprehensive about picking up the second one because I've heard a lot of people say they love this and hated the second one. And I mean, I really, really like this. I wouldn't quite say I loved it, but I did really like it. But I'm worried that if I just then pick up the second part of the duology, the whole thing's ruined for me. I'm like, maybe I should just end it here. I don't know. If any of you have read this and the second one, let me know if it is worth me picking up the second book or not. But as someone who is a music teacher, I really appreciated the sort of inclusion of music as a huge theme in this book. It even had slight Phantom of the Opera vibes at times to me, but not enough to say that it's influenced by it, I wouldn't say, but I did quite like it. And I mean, because Labyrinth has all the songs in it and they're just kind of there, it was kind of like a nice tie-in, you know, having music as part of this, even though it's not really the plot in Labyrinth. So yeah, I thought it was a clever sort of interpretation. I just felt like the second half needed something more, I think. But I've overall enjoyed it. So now it is time to go on to Between by L.L. Starling. I am going to do this 4th book, very, very long book, and I'm going to have to really apply myself to be able to try and fit in the rest of everything else I need to read this month. I'm not going to lie, this might throw off my TBR again this month by adding this one in, but I'm going to try. I think this might be part of a series again, but obviously I just have the first book and yeah, it says 1,000 pages or whatever, so I'm definitely not picking up book 2 if there is one right now. This is definitely gonna be enough for this video, but I feel like then I would have gone through all of like the most recommended I had, and then as I said, there has been others that have been named to me, so maybe I'll make a part 3 sometime later this year. So The Between by L.L. Starling, as I said, I'm reading it on my Kindle, so I will display the cover so you can see it, and this is the blurb. And it is a bewitchingly cozy, fiendishly funny cautionary tale about the perils of gate-crashing fairy tale kingdoms, particular ones with drunken unicorns, bored dragons, and sorcerers in tight leather pants. Okay, the tight leather pants reference, I get it. Sasha Pierce hasn't had a single dream since she was a child, until she accepts a substitute teaching position in the charmingly witchy village of Old Middleton. Her first dream in 25 years ought to be enchanting, but her wonder quickly turns to shock when she realizes that it's not a dream at all, but an entirely different sort of magic. Catapulted into the fairy tale kingdom of Between through an ancient portal, Sasha's astonishment is swiftly upgraded to panic when she accidentally performs a supposedly impossible feat and is declared the true queen of Between, and betrothed to its infuriatingly handsome sorcerer, King Lorne. The Shadow King of Between is desperate to break free from Between's clutches. Magically tethered to the ramshackle kingdom, he wages a daily battle to save his disreputable subjects from rampaging magical creatures, sinkholes, and catastrophes of the distressingly lethal variety. To avoid an early grave, he needs an escape plan, not a wife, until he learns that this magicless mortal holds the key to his freedom. Unwilling to leave her world to accept this crown, or her husband, Sasha must race against the clock to disentangle herself from this fairy tale. But her empty throne leaves a dangerous rift between their worlds. As dark forces descend upon Old Middleton, the two must make a choice: work together or unleash fairy tale chaos upon their realms. Between is the spellbinding first novel in the chronicles between the Between fantasy series, filled with feisty fairy tale savvy heroines, swoon-worthy sorcerers, slow burn romance, morose minotaurs, and bawdy witches. It's a laugh-out-loud fairy tale romp. That might be like the world's longest blurb I've ever read. But it does sound really, really good. I don't know if I really get like too much Labyrinth vibes in the actual story, like in the plot, but maybe that will be kind of refreshing, because I feel like in the books I've read so far, I've had more like labyrinthy type vibes in the plots, but not so much in the romance. Whereas this one, maybe it's going to come through in the romance with, you know, the sorcerer and the tight leather pants. But I mean, regardless of how similar I find this to Labyrinth, I mean, the actual book description just sounds like something I'd really enjoy. I love dragons, etc. So I think this sounds really interesting. So yeah, it does say that it is the first book. So yeah, I'm only reading the first one because, as I said, it says it's like 1,000 pages, unless my Kindle's got that wrong. But I will go away, read this, and let you know what I think. Okay, I made it. I made it. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it through this last book before sharing this video, but I have just about done it. It's going to make my sort of editing timeline a little tight, but I know I can get it up in time. So yes, I have finished The Between by L.L. Starling, and as I said, this was definitely up there with one of the most recommended I got. I want to say Wintersong probably was the most, followed by this book. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm just going to come out and say it. I did not see Labyrinth vibes at all. I guess if I really try to pick hairs and find vibes, it is a fantasy. There are goblin characters. There is a man in tight pants. But that's kind of as close as we're getting. And I just don't feel like those things alone, without being anywhere near a similar story or romance structure, I just don't feel like it got Labyrinth vibes. That being said, I did quite enjoy the book. I'm going to give it a 3.25 star rating because I liked it enough that I am going to continue the series. The second part isn't out until November of this year, I believe. However, I did just find some parts of the plot a little slow. So essentially this book, we follow a girl called Sasha. She moves to a new town, she gets a job as a teacher, but then she kind of realizes not everything's what it seems. The townsfolk are a little bit strange, and for the first time in years, she manages to dream. The last dream she had was when she was 5 years old, and she always felt like she'd never get to dream again, and she does, and it takes her into this other world where she meets this guy in his tight pants, and to note here, no shirt. It's a huge, huge repetitive topic in the book. So she meets this guy here and is like, oh, I'm having this dream about this guy. Like, I can't believe I'm actually dreaming, but it's actually maybe a little bit more real than it seems. Obviously, she has to kind of figure this out throughout the book, and not everything is what it seems in the town. There's actually a lot of witches and witchcraft, so it's actually quite a supernatural town, as well as her dreams having their own supernatural element. And I don't feel like this is a spoiler because it's kind of given away in the blurb, but essentially she is someone that this other place, her dreamland, which is known as The Between, it has decided that she should be their queen. And it's just sort of picked her and she needs to basically go live there, but it's sort of her struggle of trying to figure out a way of maybe not moving there with the help of her friends and just everything complex that comes with being the potential queen of this land. And that's sort of the main plot without like saying too many details so that there aren't too many spoilers. That is kind of the plot of the story. But then what happens? So I think I mentioned that this is really long. So on my Kindle, it's over 1,000 pages. I did read somewhere, I think in physical form, it might be like 750 or 800 or something like that. But essentially what makes it so long is it's split into two parts, and part one is what I just described, and then part two is the exact same story but from the Shadow King, the guy in the tight pants, perspective. And so honestly, it's like you get to the end of the story and then you got to start all over again. And some of the scenes do overlap, so I just felt like it was a little bit on the slow side, and even before that was a little on the slow side because the chapters are so long in this book. And also I don't feel like each chapter like particularly moves the plot that far forward, some better than others. Like some parts of this story I was really absorbed in, and that's why I've given it 3.25 and do want to continue because I am intrigued on where the plot's going. I love the characters. I think they are the strongest thing about this whole entire book. However, like I said, I just don't think it gives Labyrinth vibes. I just don't feel like there is enough to make it like Labyrinth because like I said, it's a guy in tight pants, but his personality, honestly, even like hints of attraction towards our female main character aren't very strong. I just don't feel like the romance, really the characters, or the plot really match with the Labyrinth. The way it matches is that it's like a fantasy sort of dream realm. But there are lots of novels like that, and you can't say every single novel that is a fantasy based on sort of a dream realm is like Labyrinth. I think that's too broad. But like I said, I did sort of enjoy it. I still enjoyed it much more than any of the books I read in my last sort of Labyrinth videos. So yeah, overall, I feel like I have had some good finds in this kind of search for Labyrinth 5 books. Just, I wouldn't say any of them fully met the Labyrinth 5 mark, but the Wintersong one was reasonably close with like the historical fiction twist. But hopefully, even though I wouldn't say I found anything perfect with Labyrinth vibes, because I feel like most of them lean towards the plot rather than the romance element, or they kind of just miss the mark completely. Hopefully you found some books that at least intrigue you, because I do think some of these are worth a read. I just don't know if they're going to capture Labyrinth for you as much as you'd want. That's kind of my honest opinion on this. I think there's some really good books here, especially Caraval, but I just don't know if they're going to quite capture the Labyrinth. Like, I still haven't found anything that's really got that essence. I don't want a copy. So that's why I still really enjoy some of these books. But especially in the romance element, I'm not really getting this kind of like forbidden love longing vibe, which I feel like is what the Labyrinth is about, in my opinion. You may disagree. Please let me know in the comments if you like feel like you get different sort of romance vibe from Labyrinth. I'd love to hear your take on what you look for in the romance aspect to kind of remind you of Labyrinth. Obviously, the one thing I definitely want is I want older characters. I do not want a teenager as our main love interest in whatever version I find. But apart from that, I am looking for something that I think just a little bit more similar. So quick recap of everything we read. Obviously the novelization, that's its own thing. Of course that has Labyrinth vibes. But in terms of the other books and similar vibes, Caraval, my favorite. I would say second least most Labyrinth-like, to be honest. But like I said, she is trying to save her sister in this kind of weird, and it is sort of like it isn't a dream, but it has that kind of dreamlike element. So I do think there is some Labyrinth vibes here. And honestly, it's just a great book. So I still highly recommend it. It gives you enough vibes if you like this kind of thing. I think if you like Labyrinth, you'll like Caraval. The Forbidden Game. Like I said, recommend first book. Honestly, I wouldn't really read past it. I think you can buy all three separately, but I think they may be a little bit harder to get hold of. This was just the one I found, so this is how I got it. But I do think the first book's much better. The first book gives some kind of Labyrinth vibes. Even with the main guy, he does give a little bit of a Jareth vibe, but I don't really feel like the romance element is actually very Labyrinth, but the character himself does have a little bit of that going on, like a Jareth vibe. I just don't feel like the actual romance works in that sense. I think it's more the plot, the fact that, you know, like I said, Jumanji meets Labyrinth. It's very much they're sucked into this world and they have to fight their fears to get out. And it is like sort of going through like a labyrinth of corridors. Then Wintersong by Jae-Jones. This is definitely my second favorite after Caraval. I think it's more similar to Labyrinth, but I just think Caraval absorbed me a lot more. There was slight pacing issues in this one where parts of it I loved, parts of it I found a bit slow. But definitely worth a read if you are looking for those Labyrinth vibes, I think. I don't think it's going to be for everyone, but I think it's worth a try. I think it's a pretty good book. It kept me entertained enough. And then of course we have The Between. And like I said, I do think the story overall is quite good. I will say, compared to the Goodreads rating, I am rating it quite a lot lower. I think it actually scores 4.06 or something right now on Goodreads. So maybe it's just a me thing. Maybe I just expected more Labyrinth vibes, so it made me not even like the book quite as much as I could have done had I not had that expectation. But I do think the story and the characters are really good. I just think that the way the story is portrayed is a little bit too slow. I think it could have been made so much shorter. So that's kind of my issue with it. I still think it could be one worth picking up because I think like if you like Labyrinth, you're still gonna like this kind of genre. I just don't think it really feels like Labyrinth at all, and I don't think you should go in with that expectation. So yeah, that is everything I read in my quest to find the perfect book with Labyrinth vibes. I wouldn't say I found anything perfect yet, but I've definitely found some good books this time and enjoyed myself, and it hasn't put me in a reading slump like last time, so this is great. If you have any other recommendations of books you think I might like that have slight Labyrinth vibes, please do let me know. I've still got a few more that I can try out that were mentioned on my TikTok, but I don't think they were like as popularly mentioned as some of these ones, but they're still ones I'm willing to try and pick up in the future. So there probably will be a part 3 to this, but I think I might have a little bit of a gap. But like I said, let me know if you have any suggestions, and if you've read any of these before, let me know your thoughts on them, because I would love to hear how Labyrinth vibes you feel that these books are. And also let me know what you look for in a Labyrinth sort of vibe book. That would be kind of interesting. But I really hope you have enjoyed this part 2, and if you haven't watched part 1, do go watch it. Like I said, the books for me personally were a lot more of a letdown, but I do think some people would like them. And I think if you want to just sort of know what they're about and just talk about Labyrinth vibe books in general, they're definitely worth it, because the first books are very, very, very much based upon Labyrinth. Like they are definitely things that you can tell have taken direct things and inspiration from them. I just feel like the way it was executed really missed the mark in all of those. But if you've enjoyed the video, please press the subscribe button. It means so, so, so much to me, especially if you do want me to keep doing more of these Labyrinth videos. Give it a thumbs up so that I know that people are interested in it, and I will see you again real soon. Bye!